There's a connection to the gods when it comes to this. When it comes to Lars. This is The Good Strings, Volume 3. For all intents and purposes, for the bastard son of Heihachi and the chosen son of Zeus. Link in the upper right for Volume 2. Now let's see if we can get you one step closer to godlike. And begin. Starting with Orbital Hill, lesser known as Storm Axle. This move perhaps should have been covered in Volume 1. However, this Good String series was going to initially stick to, well, strings. But as time goes on and things evolve, so do we. So let's talk about it. The premier launcher for Lars. It's mid, crushes or goes over low attacks and dick jabs. And in my opinion, Lars has the best orbital in the game because of one word: distance. I've covered both Arc Blast and Flashing Strike in Volume 2 of this series. Both of those moves, staples in Lars' wheelhouse. However, unlike those attacks, Storm Axle covers more ground, so use this against opponents whiffing from great lengths. It also can be used to get right next to your opponent, as it's -9 on block. Safe. And blocked by your opponent, it could serve Lars well to duck and test out a junk punch. Opponents overzealous to take their turn with high attacks will be giving it right back. Orbital Hill shines when anticipating low attacks. You may very well have a read on an opponent's low, but if you choose a mid button, let's say Arc Blast or Flashing Strike, one moment too late, the low is already hitting you, right? But with Storm Axle, Lars can already be in the to crush said low for a nice counter hit launch. To take this sort of thinking a bit further, watch out for low attacks that are a part of strings that don't gel. And to press this even more, you can get all the mileage possible out of Orbital with an opponent's misuse of a single action. A great use I find is noticing ops that like to take their turn back with Junk Punch. Recognize the pattern, introduce them to some lightning. And if your opponent is jab checking from a bit of distance, kind of trying to control space, you can sneak in an orbital here as a whiff punish every now and then as well. And if not, you're right next to your opponent, and depending on knowing the matchup or not, that might be a good thing or bad thing for you. Lars' Orbital Hill is a slow enough startup that Lars can be jabbed out and floated for a combo by his opponent. So we aren't just throwing this out just to see what happens. Be sure to use this move with purpose upon a read and recognizing enemy playstyles. And Storm Axle is extremely steppable every which way. And as you progress further in ranks, you may find people stepping more often. And learn well the moves that Orbital doesn't have time to leap over, like Negan's Shin Smasher or Kaza's Twin Fang Double Kick, hell of a name, as well as opponents mix-ups like Miguel and Brian here. Both have mids that are counter hit launchers. If you'd rather not gamble with your life and just eat the low, I understand. Let's talk about Back 2-1, the unfortunately named Gilbert Smash. 2 mid attacks, starting at 16 frames. The range of the first hit is not the greatest, but it's +4. So hey, stop right here, go for it down for 1, because you're +4, it's a free hit, or finish the string. The whole thing is guaranteed on hit, a natural string, which leaves you at +4. Down forward 1 can show up again. +4 doesn't grant much in terms of advantageous frames, though a magnetic knee against a slow pressing opponent is not the worst idea. However, watch out for those who respond fast. Windliger may also surprise an enemy, going under high attacks and even some mids. In the 15 frame double tap is a good option against enemies that don't respect but are slow on the button as well. You'll hear me start singing the praises of down 4 right about here. Don't worry, I will mention this again. Unfortunately though, things like down forward 1 and down 4 can be backdashed after smash hits, so be sure to stay safe out there. Use back 2-1 as a delayable string. Because of that delay on the second punch, bait enemies to see if they know Lars, as that second punch is a beautiful counter hit launcher if they press. Paul does double X, you can duck. Asuka does Mizu Basho, you can launch. Test their knowledge of your character against theirs. Speaking of strings that you know, remember, this is a mid attack. Enemies that are left -7, -9 that try to dig jab will be beaten out by Gilbert Smash. And those who relent their turn being over have to promptly face this delayable string. To press or not to press? That is the question. Gilbert Smash, oh boy, that name, is -10 on block. But does your opponent know that? Again, good move to knowledge check, as going up against Mishimas, and they know Lars, you're gonna know that they know proper quick. Be careful out there. The biggest issue you may have implementing this move, just like myself, is the fact that enemies tend to just hold the back button. Lars has a bevy of mids. I know that. You know that. If the ops know that, they just hold back. They just block the mids. And that problem brings us to variation to perhaps make this smash more viable. First, whether it's a Mishima or not, we can make this string safe and attain good pushback with move 50 Gilbert Cannon back 2-3. Because of course, enemies just block, right? And be sure to keep in your back pocket that Gilbert Cannon wall splits. And don't think about that sentence outside of Tekken. But this is a good string to go for after a wall combo. You move against an enemy first, the kind that likes to wake up with a duck. Or a hezzy big frame button. You strike first here, rather than wait to block a move and go for a death mask to splat. Cannon, like Smash, is a natural string. You land the first hit, you get the second. This is Lars' fastest natural mid string that wall splats. Keep this in mind. And Cannon knocks down on hit to set up ground game. Earth Battery will hit if an adversary doesn't kip up or quickly backroads. Though it is a generic tool, this is a great time to start using down 4 with Lars. 12 frames, it avoids all highs, stops opponents in their tracks, resets things. Hey, they're just holding back against Lars, right? Back 2, then down 4. At -7, you can't sidestep a relatively quick returning attack, but waiting for that second hit at Gilbert Smash, sneaking in a down 4 is a viable option. Another attack to keep your offense going is Arc Combination, It ducks under highs. Again, back 2. Enemy is hesitant, not protecting their feet. And now, you can be +1. This type of annoying action rounds things back to Gilbert Smash. The enemy tries their luck. Of fear of being hit by a low, counter hit launcher is on deck. These are faux mix-ups, so to speak, that Lars can use as a band-aid against not really having a lot of real ones, at least not just standing in front of enemies with no stances included. And though the next move is a risk to use, it is Lars. That's kind of what he does. It also gives us some real mix-up options upon it. It's like plugging into the Matrix. You don't have to, but you have to. Unseeable at 21 frames and evasive to high attacks, Shadow Cutter is +5 on hit and forces your enemy into a crouch, severely limiting what moves they can respond with. Despite the danger of throwing this move out, it crushes highs. Look for that counter hit, though it really looks for itself, against those who attack with a lot of high strings, or are repetitive in throwing out the same high attack over and over again. The caveat is simple. Lars gives his life bar to enemies when they block this. They can get a whole universal hop kick on our guy here. Disgusting! Because of this risk, the following moves are prudent to use in the situation when Shadow Cutter hits. However, I'm going to go through options for both Shadow Cutter and Arc Combo here, as Arc Combination is somewhat safer, in my opinion, to get into this crouch mix. The first attack is only -12. You don't have to throw out the whole thing, and the 16 frames is that much more unseeable to me. Though you sacrifice frame advantage on hit, the fact that you give your opponent more incentive to foolishly attack as opposed to Shadow Cutter, where knowing that they are at a great disadvantage, they may just hold back, limiting what you can get as they limit their risk. Now this next section is going to be a lot, so come back as needed. It will be here, digested in small parts if needed. That's why it has been cut the way it has. Lars in this crouch, whether from Shadow Cutter or Arc Combination, a move covered in good strings, Volume 1 for Lars. Let's take a look at some advantageous situations and mind games Lars can play against opponents from here. Since Lars is just +1 from Arc Combo into crouch, a while rising 4 will trade with a 1 jab or junk punch. To deter your opponent's 1 jab or junk punch after Arc Combo hits, a dick jab yourself, a 10 frame button, is a viable attack. Not only against high 1 jabs, but 13 frame mids as well. Lars will be +6, and you can do a little extra damage that is safe if your opponent still presses with a while rising 4. Now from Shadow Cutter on hit, while rising 4 has too much frame advantage to be undercut or interrupted by any button your opponent presses, as they have to do so from a crouching position. However, watch out for the likes of Asuka, who can blow this whole thing up with her parry, as well as guys like Paul Phoenix. Since enemies will be locked down after Shadow Cutter, sidestepping out of the way of Rising 4 is not an option. More advanced players may sidestep Rising 4 out of Arc Combo if they think they have a read on it. But wait, there's more! Enter the strong pimp hand of Double Smack, while crouching down forward 1+2. This setup is predicated on an enemy conditioned to trade while rising 4 with you after Arc Combo with their 1 jab, or they're content with getting hit by Arc Com and just tried and true against Lars, hold the back button. Double Smack evades all high attacks, 2 low strikes for a nice 24 damage, and is an integral part of this mix-up game here. This does make a once trading 1 jab null and void, but Junk Punch shuts this move down after arc combo hits. However, remember our old friend Storm Axle if you find your opponent likes to turn the tables this way. See the game that's being played here? Lars can actually do some stuff, make people guess, make people make decisions. And it can catch sidesteppers too. More on that later, but really on those moving to their right. If they really know Lars and really have a great read, they can step left and parry or hop kick. Holes in Lars' game, I know. Double Smack after Shadow Cutter loses to Junk Punch too because of the 18 frame startup. It loses to a fair amount of Wild Rising moves as well because remember, the cutter forces your opponent into crouch. In both instances of use, enemies looking to parry mids and highs will be hit. And though Lars is a mere +1, it has never been a greater time to punish mashing opponents with Delta Slicer for a full counter hit knockdown. The worst of things for Double Smack in the enemy reading you correctly is hop kick. Since it's a low, no matter how you get there, a hop kick will evade it and launch you. But sidestepping opponents anticipating Rising 4 will get their shoes shined in the worst way possible instead. Enter Multiplied Force, while Rising 2-1. The preferred and seemingly premier way of Lars players to go into silent entry. We won't go into Lars stances today, that's another video for another time. Right now, it's about an enemy that thinks Double Smack is incoming and tries that hop kick. The first hit of Multiplied Force, while Rising 2, will actually interrupt the mid jump and float them for a combo. Or splat them on the ground if you finish the whole string while they're in this state. There's a good level of evading high attacks in the Rising 2 button of Multiplied Force. If meticulously timed, a one jab will trade with Rising 2. But honestly, I never see that. Also, keep in mind being +1 from arc combo, Multi-Force will hit faster than a 13 frame mid. No such float action will happen landing the Rising 2 after Shadow Cutter. Your opponent literally does not have frames for the hop kick to come out. However, Multiplied Force being 13 frames, whatever button the enemy presses will lose. In both versions, if the enemy blocks the first strike of Multiplied Force and damn tired of getting hit, presses, that second attack launches on counter hit. Beware, of course, once again, of those parrying mother. Don't be afraid to attack by going back to Double Smack. From a smack of double to a spike of power. Power Spike. While crouching, down forward 2. Power Spike is +5 on normal hit and safe at -8 on block, and is a counter hit launcher. Out of arc combination, this move is not the most viable to me in terms of landing that counter hit. It becomes more of a possibility if Lars' opponent is discombobulated by his movement, going in and out of stances, fearful of pressing a button after arc combination hits, and unsure of Lars' frame advantage, and they simply press late. For those who like to just block, delaying Power Spike after arc hits might land you that counter hit with an enemy lured into a false sense of security. All these mix-ups though, if the enemy goes for a hop kick, Power Spike will float them for a combo. Power Spike after arc combo loses to one jab. It may appear to have high evasion, but like a rock'em sock'em robot, Lars' head pops up during the attack. In frame-wise, this 15 frames loses to 13 mids as well, so I wouldn't recommend fishing for a counter hit off arc combo with Power Spike unless your opponent is respecting you to the point where they hesitate to press buttons, or they simply keep pressing heavy big frame buttons after being hit, or you suspect a hop kick incoming. Power Spike is better used in tandem with Shadow Cutter, where the best an enemy can get from being placed in crouch in -5 is a 10-frame junk punch that will trade with Power Spike for a counter hit launch. You can also float hop kicks out of this move as well. Of course, in both attack paths, you already know, watch out for that parry posse. So all of this becomes a risk-reward guessing game. Shadow Cutter is high risk, but really limits counteraction. Arc combination to Rising 4, but can lose to Power Crush. Double Smack against Power Crush and jabs, but beaten by Hop Kick. Multiplied Force against Hop Kick. Arc combo version beaten by Junk Punch. Orbital against Junk Punch, and etc. and etc. Risk, reward. Reading the read. Rock, paper, scissors. Playing some fucking Tekken. Beautiful. Additionally, rule number 1 comes into play here. Knowing your enemy. Arc combination, while Rising 4 against King's Power Crush, Lars can block that. So depending on the personnel, you may be able to rely on more or less options. Getting individual matchups under your belt gets you that much closer to godlike. You can also bait out a Power Crush, or an enemy responds by, well, pressing nothing after arc combination. See what they do, and punish accordingly. An arc com into throw can flat out deter your opponent from trying to respond with Power Crush altogether. That was a lot of variation looking at connecting different attack paths from crouch. Now let's look at these crouch options all in their own. Doing Power Spike, Double Smack, Multiplied Force, out in the open, in the neutral, can be effective simply by threatening your opponent with a full crouch forward motion. There is some nuance to this, and may take some getting used to because you're vulnerable to mids. But remember, multi-force comes out at 13 frames, and is a great 13 frame punisher for like frames. The first swipe is +3, tracks well against sidesteps, -8 on block. The key to get into silent entry with relative safety, but again, that's for another time and place. This move is quite beautiful, as the whole thing is a mere -12 on block, while forcing crouch whether on block or hit. Natural strain that leaves Lars at +5, and of course, if enemies try their luck, counter hit. A good way to try to implement this all on its own is after blocking an enemy's attack and they relent their turn. You notice they don't try to dick jab, though they may turtle up, as there are plenty of players who do this after string or attack is blocked, which leaves them open to being hit by the rising mid. If they junk punch after attacking and it whiffs, while Rising 2 can be placed here as well. But it has to be done quickly, anticipating the poke. So why not just go for Arc Blast, you ask? You can, but this is simply safer if things don't go as planned. And using a dick jab yourself after blocking something, now you have some plus frames. Multiplied Force is advantageous here too. Double Smack by itself isn't steppable to your opponent's right. If they step left from one jab range, the second hit will clip them. Up close, this move is steppable to op's left, but Double Smack tracks well for the most part. Furthermore, it's only -12. Using this move is same as it ever was. It's pretty much a repeat of the Multiplied Force rules. Ops is minus after attacking, they respect frames, and you go for Double Smack, aka Shoe Shine. Remember, Lars is +1. However, he does not stay crouching after this move, and if the opponent presses, you get that full Delta Slicer on counter hit here. And if they turtle up expecting one jab after Double Smack, or just turtle up after finishing their turn, you may want to try your luck with Streamer, as it's a natural launcher, perhaps better used with Shadow Cutter hitting, as it beats out opponents while rising moves, will trade with a junk punch, and though it's only -12 on block, well, it's not safe. Another method to using this move is arc comb, pretty much like the previous example. Fake double smack on an enemy conditioned for you going for it, and go for streamer instead. Careful though, this can be sidestepped to Lars' left if they step and block quickly, and streamer is avoidable altogether, stepping to Lars' right. The most gimmicky way I've seen streamer being used is as a not so risky faux mix-up with the first attack of arc combo. The enemy ducking to block may stay ducking in anticipation of the high attack. That's when While Rising 1 may get some usage. I've seen this work, I've seen this not work. I've used this myself to win and also to lose. In whatever the case, why not just go for Power Spike? 15 frames, it's safe as opposed to streamer. The balance here is it's a counter hit launcher, but you have to be in full crouch to access those 15 frames. It can feel slow, but the mix is there between all these moves that work together to create a collective trap, kind of baiting your opponent or threatening them in full crouch. As any time you let go of down forward, you go right back to blocking. Again though, this takes time to get used to proper spacing and timing. A junk punch will help you get this mix started. +6 and then double smack or power spike, after which on normal hit, dick jab will now beat out both a 10 frame jab and a 13 mid. Or go into multi-force against a down forward parry. You're getting the picture, I'm sure. Mix it up, create a menace out of Lars. And perhaps add a little rarity too, maybe. As normally I find people press buttons after arc combo hits, as they have counteractions to take. Power crush, hop kick, parry things we've gone over here. But what if you find yourself up against an enemy that doesn't challenge? Rising 3, Tower Cannon, a high attack that I rarely see and admittedly use myself, will grant you +7 on block. So it's there if you want to give it a shot. Wall splats as well. Alright, now back to basics. Unlike Delta Slicer, where as a Punisher move, only the first hit is guaranteed, both punches of 1-2 combination will land, and Lars is +7. 1-2 is steppable to Lars' left shoulder, though not the easiest thing to do. The second punch clips those stepping to his right. Lars having a few moves himself that evade highs. Watch out for enemies that have similar moves. Of course, parry and junk punch will definitely become prevalent if you're repetitious with this action. And be mindful of the hitboxes on this string. There is a bit of pushback here on hit, so sometimes the first punch will land, but the second won't, because as the attack pushes the enemy back, Lars also moves forward, but not step for step. I think this is referred to as physics. So sometimes the first jab will whiff, but the second jab will hit. Action, reaction. You may be used to fishing for a counter hit by punishing with one jab and then attacking with Delta Slicer as your go-to line of offense. But 1-2 is an actual 10 frame punisher for Lars. And only -1 on block. You may be able to get away with sneaking in a down forward 1, or Legionnaire spin, or going underneath something with Windline, or high risk, high reward Shadow Cutter. And after 1-2 combination lands, double tap is a great follow-up, safe, and Lars is too close for his opponent to sidestep. Also, think about Chevron Slash. And I'll mention Wind Liger here again at only -11 to opponents you notice who continuously try to step Lars, as he is weak to sidesteps. arc combo is also really good here against power crushes, as ones like Miguel's and Konimitsu's will shred through Chevron, Windliger, and even back 4 magnetic knee if not thrown out immediately. Jeez. If you notice your opponent likes to power crush a lot to take their turn back, this will be a good time to use down 3-1 Tesla Gravity as well. A 15 frame low, though short range, you get the whole thing on counter hit. +4, -7 on block. The reason why I say use it here against power crush is because a low hitting on normal hit, the high swipe can be ducked and launched. 1-2 on hit or block. This is a good spot for Lars to poke with down 4. 12 frame low after the 1-2 string. It resets things. No one has a real big advantage anymore, but it can start to nag your opponent. Power crush notwithstanding, here's a good placement for our next move and a great attack after 1-2 hits. Elbow Corona. It's Corona time. A forward moving attack, pretty good range. This can catch enemies moving around, thinking they're at a safer distance from you than they really are. This strike knocks down on hit. And if you get the hit, great. If not, you're safe with the pushback from this move. The best thing about this strike, of course, is that it's a safe counter hit launcher. You got some plus frames. After just about anything plus on block Lars can do, trust in the elbow, young Kimosabi, as you look for that counter hit. After say 1-2 hits, +7, and this is about a 16 frame attack. Elbow Corona on its own, with a lot of pushback as mentioned before. Good recon moment to see if your opponent presses or not. -9, I know, but this is where down 4 comes back around yet again, or dig jab if the enemy tries to move in with a 1 button. Landing a knockdown with this, you can repeat this move on an opponent attempting to get off the ground, and changing how much you dash forward in the timing of elbow Corona, you can really throw your opponent off and score that counter hit. This is a weapon that can be used purely on its own in neutral play. It's timing and rhythm over frames. Over time, you will gain a feel for it. Oh yeah, this move can't be parried by the limb snatchers, and it wall splats. The input adds time when the move actually comes out. And if enemies know the minus frames of this move and you don't respect it, they'll make you pay. Enemies sidewalking to Lars' left shoulder can avoid this attack, not so much to the right. That brings us to our last move of the day, tying everything together as it were. Down 2, Tactical Sword. This attack is a one-shot mid that's a nice +8 on hit. Forces crouch, neutral on block, and knocks down on counter hit. Again, you got some plus frames? Maybe from the first 2 hits of Lightning Assault, perhaps the punches of 1-2. Enemies playing any kind of proper Tekken will have to respect you here, and as they do, remember this move forces crouch, even on a blocking opponent. Use this to harass those who just block against Lars. It forces them to turtle up. One tactic you may want to give a shot is implementing multiple down 2s to really pressure against an opponent that thinks they don't have frame advantage after they block this. And of course, on normal hit as well. A good time to rise to a stand in down 4 for a quick poke too. And if you hold down, you access all those crouch moves. Definitely look for attacks like Power Spike on hit. Look to implement this move after a defensive stand as well. Opponents say -6 to 9. Instead of just being able to hold back, they're faced with pressure of Tactical Sword instead. And once again, it's a knowledge check. Do they think Lars is plus? Do they go for a junk punch that you can parry or orbital? Perhaps a rising 4 that you can backdash or sidestep. Just being placed in crouch, not of their own volition, for Lars to take control of the game is to make some opponents respond with over-aggression. Make a mistake that you can capitalize on. I cannot overstate how much this move makes people who take their turn and block against Lars play the game. Tactical Sword evokes a response. Scoring that knockdown on counter hit, look for stack up. In, look for elbow corona. If an enemy rolls back, the hitbox of the elbow will catch. And if they press a button, you now have yourself a counter hit launcher. 18 frame startup may make you hesitant to use this in open space. More timing and rhythm comes into play here, and knowing your opponent. When blocked, remember this is neutral, for the most part. I've seen +1 at tip range, but it's not your turn to just throw out any old thing if your enemy is not fooled by the pressure. And even still, if you're dealing with a super masher, plus frames will mean nothing. All of this together, you may find it difficult to fit this move somewhere in open space. Remember, this move in that regard is a feel for the game type of move. Opponents respecting or disrespecting by not pressing buttons, eventually, you'll get the timing to force the issue. End, Tactical Sword is steppable left and right. They call this man a poke character, right? So let's get to pressing some buttons, utilizing down 4. After the first 2 hits of Delta Slice are blocked, same for Lightning Assault, double tap, just about anything -9 and below. Lars can struggle to open up his opponents without taking big risks. Though it is low damage, down 4, riddled throughout this guide, can really help you crack them open. As sometimes you want Lars to seem like thunder, just a noise that may seem troublesome, but nothing to worry about, until lightning strikes. One step closer now to godlike. Go throw some lightning at some kids asking for an ass whooping. And remember, a good string is like a good song. No matter how many times you repeat, it's just as good as it was the first time.